Hi, this is MrByZ, and if you've been following me along at on Galaxy of Toys or a couple other Facebook pages, I've been working on my own Jabba's Palace diorama. This has been an idea of mine for a very long time. I actually had the platform made, gosh, like 6, 7 years ago, and I had this giant shelf ready to go. And of course, there's one major piece missing. That would be a barge, right? But I finally kind of had the time and the means to put this all together, the area, if you will. There's times I thought about putting together in the old apartment I lived in. I just didn't have the room to actually do the work. So over the last month, I really made sure I had all the supplies and started doing this together, put it together. So I'm going to take you through some of the steps of how I made it and then show you the final result. So the first thing I did, of course, was to lay out some plans, giving myself an idea of what I wanted to do. This is a 2 foot by 3 foot platform, so I need to make sure I measure everything out and get a pretty good idea of how I want to do this. And I based the basic floor plan based on the old model kit, which I happen to have, and so I was able to use that to give myself an idea and scaled it roughly appropriately for how I wanted to do it. It's important to note here that sometimes plans changed as I went. Measurement might have been slightly wrong when I first did it, or I just kind of changed the plans as I went. Something ended up being too big that I wanted, or whatever. So some plans did change as I went. So I started off with foam core board. I had bought a bunch of it and started cutting them up into the pieces that I needed to make all the different pieces that would go through Jabba's palace. And, measuring it, I had to make sure, like, I had so tall for each of the everything that surrounds it and how I wanted to do the steps and things like that. So I actually started with the first set of steps, and you see here I've got foam core board, a big metal L ruler. It was actually my dad's, and of course the crafter's best thing, which is hot glue. Each day I would put together a few pieces and add them on. I started with that main staircase and started doing the pieces that go around it. Each one I have to measure them out and stick them up using the hot glue, going on, adding them to my main base, which is a 2 foot by 3 foot base. You can see I've added the back steps as well as the steps on the side. And I'm starting to see it come together, which is really exciting. It's like, this is actually going to work. I'm not always sure it's going to work when I'm putting it together, but I'm starting to see it. And here I've added the other side, the upper platform, which is supposed to be shorter than all the rest of it going around, at least according to the model kit. Got the covering on kind of the booths that are on the other side of Jabba's palace. And then I finally added the arches, and I had to get a French curve in order to cut these right so I could get them right. It was a new thing for me. But I got those arches set in, and I noticed a slight problem where I had to add in a second piece to the base so that the arches would match up correctly now. So here you can see where I've added that piece in, and now I also have the little alcove stairway going up there. You can see how the arch is going to work with Jabba and everything. And just as white foam core, it looks really great. Here's that alcove. You can see I actually put little steps up in there as if it's leading to somewhere. It's not, but, it's just kind of that fun of it. And all these lines and pieces I've had to put together, I don't have to worry about. I'm going to put plaster over this. It's all going to work out great. And here's a look at the other arch where the Haunted Carbonate's going to go. I'm thinking I will add the new Hasbro playset piece behind this when that comes out. That should work well. I always thought Haunted Carbonate just went there, but I didn't realize there was a trophy room before. And here's just kind of look at the finished product in foam core version. You can see how it all goes together. And then I put a bunch of figures in to see how it's going to look with figures in it. This is pretty close to how my final setup finally came up. You can see before I actually added the square for the trap door, because I do have a trap door within it too. So now I start to think about what else I'm going to put in with this. I have an 8-foot long counter, basically, put this on, shelf. And I've had this Sarlacc I built like 5-6 years ago, where I took the Hasbro Sarlacc and I put it in these 5 layers of styrofoam, put some putty, spackle type stuff over it, painted it with sand paint, and tried to, and dug out the hole and everything to make it look a little more accurate and everything. It was enough to put the skiffs on, but now with the barge is going to be behind this. It's not going to quite work. So I'm starting to think I need to build a platform, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. I also want to do Jabba's Dungeon in with this. I've had the Jabba's Dungeon playset to add to this, And I kind of wanted some authentic pieces. So Hole in the Ground Productions does a bunch of customized pieces that work well for the dungeon. You can see here I've got the door to the Rancor pit, the torture rack, the Gonk Droid torture rack piece, and another like trap door. I thought this was supposed to be the trap door for Jabba's palace, but that's not right. So I just kind of use it as a door within my stuff. But I bought these. They came like within 2 weeks. So these are going to be great additions to go onto it. You can just see a quick mock-up of how I might put all this together. The new pieces are unpainted, and how it might work. I ended up doing it slightly different from this, but just getting the idea there. So going back to Jabba's palace, I've taken my foam core pieces, and I've taken paper towels, dipped them in a plaster mix, and draped them over it to get kind of more of the curvy sides on it, to give it that look of Jabba's palace, the texture and everything, and kind of be able to put it all together. Ultimately, this didn't work the best. I didn't mix the plaster quite as well as I should have, so it was a weaker mix, and it didn't come together. If I was to do this again, I would just get that wall spackle stuff, and I'd just spread that on there. It works so much easier, and it doesn't... I had so much plaster flaking off everywhere. In fact, the base of Jabba's palace ended up losing the paper towel feel altogether because it just came right off. None of it stuck. Most of it stuck to all the pieces, so I was able to work through that. I had to re-glue down a couple of pieces, so it ended up working well with that and got it painted. And it looks okay. There's one issue I might have to replace in the future, but for the most part, I was able to get it all done here. And the next thing to arrive for this, of course, is the sail barge. I can't believe how big this thing is. And I was hoping to have everything done before this came. Weather didn't cooperate, time didn't cooperate, health didn't sometimes cooperate. So ultimately, I think I finished it a little more... I guess it was about a week and a half after my barge actually came, so I could set it all up. And here you can see I've put the main base on the platform. I didn't show a whole lot about what went into making the platform. I do have some piping going down from the trap door that'll go into the Rancor pit below. You can see that chicken wire mesh. I put plaster along that. Didn't work as well. I actually ended up using, to give that rock feeling of the wall on the Rancor pit, I ended up using that brown wrapping paper like you'd use to ship packages in, and crinkling it all up and then draping it through there. When you see the finished product, you see on the sides, that's what I used for it. I still used the plaster in the back, and I actually grabbed several actual concrete pieces and painted them the black and gray to all go together. But for the Rancor pit, I really wanted to have that look to it. So while I was drying in the back, I started to build the foam core frame that's going to go for the platform for the barge and the skiffs. You can see here I've built the frame, I've covered it with more foam core on top, put lots of support under it so it can support everything, and then gotten that spackle stuff. You can see it's still pink. It's pink when you put it on and dries white, and made that to kind of transition from my original Sarlacc piece into the large platform I'm putting together, as well as just put some random spots of spackle just so it's not just one flat area of everything. But, when you put the paint over it and the sand over it, it's going to look a lot better. So as I finish up my Sarlacc pit area here, you can see how I've added the platform here. From the picture, you saw the spots where I'd added the spackle and everything, and I've painted over it with tan paint and then sand paint. So there's one more ingredient to add to this, and that is this bag right here. This is a bag of sand from Buttercup Valley. I've been there a couple times and brought back gallon bags of sand. I've used them for a couple things, but I wanted to put some authentic sand into this. So I'm going to use some adhesive spray and add that onto this. And then when I get it done and I put the Sarlacc back in here, I want to actually sprinkle some in. I'll probably put a little sprinkle in Jabba's Palace too, just to add that authenticity. So I get Jabba's Palace platform all done and I install it into the shelf where it's going to go. I've now added lights, as you can see, to the top of it. It's just a string of battery powered, what do they call them, fairy lights or something like that, just to add a little extra light in there. I'm going to add more light to a few other things. So now I've added the Dune Sea platform in, got the barge on it, got the skiffs on it, to kind of get an idea how this is going to work. I don't know if about all the positioning. You can see I've put all the sand down on that. It really brings it out. It looks so much more authentic with that sand in there. I'm really impressed. I'll add some more to a few other places that'll really make a difference. And then here's just kind of a look at what the Sarlacc looks like with that sand in there. You can see how that looks really good. So one of the other things I want to do was the front gate to Jabba's palace. It's just going to be a facade. I had a little area to do it. So I needed to build the gate. And this is built out of paint stirrers. The long pieces that go across are the paint stirring sticks. And then like large popsicle stick, like craft sticks are what they call it. I cut off the rounded ends and made that so you could have the beams going up. And then added a little bit more to it. It's just all wood, and then I'd paint it. Now I can add the figures in Jabba's palace. I actually hot glue everything in place so they don't fall over. But as you can see, it now looks like it's populated. I have characters roughly in the same place as they are in the movie. I usually have a couple scenes going on, like Leia Bausch is actually at Han and Carbonite. Most of the scene is Luke confronting Jabba. And there's a couple little minor things going around there that, you know, continuity-wise doesn't make sense as one full scene, but there's lots of little things going on. So next I populate Jabba's sail barge here. Everything is hot glued into place, but you know, I have little kind of scenes going on. Nothing's totally movie accurate, but you know, a lot of the right stuff that's in place there. I do have the Nikto coming up through there, and R2 still has those bar pieces, but it all kind of works. So here you can see the gate has now been painted. It's kind of a bronze. It's that, what do you call it? Bronze silver. It gives you the texture of metal and everything. I actually used a pen cap to put those circles into it. It didn't totally stay there in the final product, but here you can see I've taken another piece of foam core, put the spackle stuff on it to give it that texture, and I'll paint it again later. So I took that door I got from Hole in the Ground and I put it in another piece of foam core, again spackled around it, just to give a quick facade as if the entrance to the Rancor pit, since I don't want to cover all the Rancor pit. But you can see how that looks right here with the Rancor keepers. You can kind of see the Rancors behind. And here's what the dungeon looks like in the end. I need to get a 2-1B droid to go in the torture rack yet. But this is the basic idea. I've got the figures ultimately set up kind of how they are in the movie, not totally, and put a bunch of Build-A-Droid pieces in there to add the junk around there and everything. I know it's not 100% accurate with the old dungeon playset, but, you know, I kind of wanted to use it. I thought it'd be fun. So here you can just kind of see a picture within Jabba's palace, how it all looks right there. And then the barge is finally set up in the right spot with everything there. And you can see the final product of the front gate. I'm especially proud of the sand on this. It was a total accident, and I flipped it up onto the gate, but it looks so perfect. I put the footprints and everything in the sand just to make it look. This is one of my favorite pieces by far that I finished. It was really simple, and yet it looked so good when it got done. You see the final product. That arch on the side might be replaced in the future. It got kind of warped when I did it. But you can see all the figures in there, including the band. Behind you'll see blue. I'll explain that a little bit more later. I added the extra barge gun on here as if it's defenses for Jabba's palace. And yes, that is Indiana Jones making an appearance in there just for fun. It also has Indy on one side and Han and Carbonite on the other, which I enjoy. Down below, you can see there is a trapdoor below Luke. You can open that up. And you go down the tube and into the Rancor pit. I have 4 Rancors down here just for fun. You can see how the texture came out on the back walls. It looks pretty good. It's just paper and paint. Here's the facade for the Rancor keepers and the dungeon as everything came out. I do have this lit with Christmas tree lights going above everything. I'm going to add kind of maybe a couple, when the new skiffs come out, I'll add the old skiffs kind of in there as a garage somewhere. And here is the front of Jabba's palace with the gate right there. Like I said, I'm especially proud of that. And then we get up on the Dune Sea platform, and we can see the sail barge itself. There is a blue sheet behind. I went and bought just the cheapest twin sheet I could find, and this is an 8-foot by 3-foot shelving I put this on, and I just stapled it up into the back so I'd have a blue sky background. You can see the skiffs, even the desert sailed skiff from the vintage back there. Obviously, a few more characters to get, and we'll be trading up for the new skiffs when those come out. Even have a Weequay popping out. I'm just really impressed by how this all came out, and it's just so much fun. And got to end with the door. last look here, you can see that Facade and Bomar Monks, of course, we need those. That is a look at my Jabba's Palace display and Dune Sea, I guess you'd say. This is, like I said, been a lot of work to go into this. It's been a lot of fun to do over this month of March. Most of it's been easy to do at times because we've had really sunny weather here in the Pacific Northwest. Unlike last month, we had lots of snow. So to finally kind of get into this and get it done has been a lot of fun. I love looking at it. It's very cool now. There's obviously more to go on, but this is kind of a glimpse in at my collection. I hope to have all my collection set up and ready to go in July when I have a bunch of people over. So I'm hoping to make that happen at that point. But it's really cool. I feel like I'm getting a lot closer. I hope you enjoyed this. I usually do the review videos, but this one I just kind of want to show off something I did anyway. And I'll be back to some reviews and retrospectives here very soon. If you liked this or had comments, please post below. I love hearing from you. You can check out my other videos. I've done reviews of the sail barge. I'm going to have retrospectives of Jabba the Hutt and the Rancor coming up, and lots of other reviews over the last few years that you can go check out. And you can subscribe by clicking right here, and then you'll always be aware of everything I've got coming up. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy your collecting.